somebody runs a marathon, say you run a 3-hour marathon, you have at least 1 hour of indescribable agony. So I thought about that. Now, you train 6, 8 months, and you still end up with that 1 hour of indescribable agony where you suck it up and you finish. My slowest marathon was 3 hours and 56 minutes, and I did that on no training. So all I had to figure out how to do was withstand 1 extra hour of indescribable agony. Then I could run real slow, live through it, and I'd get rid of all that training that everybody goes through for all those months. I lined up at the start of the race, right? I'm girding my loins, you know, I've wrapped my legs. I am prepared for the ultimate life forces, you know, the agony, the everything else I have prepared. And I line up, and I'm sitting here thinking, God, I hope I survive. And I'm looking around, you know, at the crowd, you know, feeling the tension, you know, and everybody getting prepped up. And I look back and I see this friend of mine right behind me. This guy's an ultramarathoner. I said, I didn't know you ran a race this short. He said, well, yeah. He said, normally I don't, but I was up at Dallas yesterday and I ran a 62-mile race on Saturday and drove back home. And today, you know, I figured, well, I'll run 26 miles. Maybe I can get the lactic acid out of my legs. But I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to kill myself, and he's getting the lactic acid out of his legs.
Of course, that whole Legion Viaduct was just an undulating thing. It was uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill, and it finally came downhill and turned. And there was the mariachis there on the side, you know, and everybody sitting there dancing and swimming. I mean,
but there were so many people at that point, you still couldn't really tell. You know, you got lost in the uphill, downhill. Yeah. It wasn't like later when you knew that when you could see it was uphill, downhill. There were enough people, and it was just sort of going.
Thing was, I liked when we came down off the Legion Viaduct, came into town again there. On Main Street. And I was chugging along, and I knew this girl at the Exxon station, and they were all dressed up as little tigers and everything.
Was that Tommy?
Tommy.
Okay, downtown, yeah.
And all of a sudden I saw her, and I ran over and I kissed her. You know, all these guys around me going saying, hey, hey. I said, well, you know, that's part of the benefits, you know, of being a marathoner. You know? You know, and they were good.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Boy, once I hit on South Main Street and started heading out past the Mecum Fountain, and then you turn on University, and they had so many people out there. I'm running along, and I'm saying, I'm timing myself, saying, oh, I'm going too fast. I shouldn't, I hit the old glide stride.
We're going to run now but pay later.
But, oh, we got to look good for the crowds, you know.
West Park, where the big hill is. I mean, that's the highest point of the marathon. And I looked and I saw that thing coming up, and I thought, oh no. And the closer you got, and all those, you could hear, because they had music playing. I mean, this was a big deal. They had one group there that, at every point that there was some group.
Oh, the beach party.
Doing some sort of thing, and they were doing Beach Boys music, and it was just all right, and everybody perk up again, and you're going, why am I doing this? I'm about to die, but I'm having a good time. And you go, running down the hill, not because you want to run, because gravity is pulling you all the way down to the corner. And you turn the corner, and it's like
in the group.
The music's out of sight and out of earshot again, and I'm dying, and nobody cares anymore.
Time because I thought real marathon runners didn't walk and they didn't stop. It took me till about my 5th marathon to figure that out. That they didn't walk along. Surely they did.
I found out they did on my first marathon.
Well, people were passing me walking, but I was still running.
You were still running, right?
Little itty bitty tiny steps, but I was still running.
You'd be surprised how hilly Woodway is when you run 22 miles, So I come chugging up to the overpass there, and there's all these people cheering us on and everything like that, and, I'm totally oblivious. I come up to the belly dancers, and, being a single man, and everything like that. Unrequited love, et cetera, et cetera. Hadn't had a date in a long time because I've been training so hard. And so what happened I'm just looking down at the ground saying, I am going to finish. I'm not going to stop for nothing or nobody. If I stopped, I'll drop dead, so obviously I've got to keep going. So I'm chugging along. And here are the belly dancers over here, and they're all lined up, about 6 of them. They're all got their little things going, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. So I'm kind of working their stuff. I'm not even looking. And then my neck was kind of stiff, and I kind of went like that, and I looked, and here was this woman, kind of a little extra. Had a little extra on her, endowed, and she kind of saw me look, and she kind of gave me a little extra, ka-ching, ka-ching, like that. And I wasn't even going to slow down or stop. It just kind of like the eyes just kind of rolled over my head, looked, and then I just went, I didn't even look back. I was focused on the idea that I was going to finish.
There was a carpet of oranges. I'm talking about, that you grab an orange slice and you rip out the meat and the peeling goes on the floor.
And you vigorously drive to the ground, you rip out the meat.
Right, and you're back into the breach again, zooming along.
As I was walking along, I saw someone who had orange that disagreed with them. I said, well, somebody's worse off than I am. I kept going.
Gustavo 501. 21:38, Nicholas Colucci. 21:51, Tom Gaten. 28:49, Stephen Plateau. 29:95, Dick Beery. 20:98, Gary Lincoln. 22:20, Ralph Hampton. 13:11, Dick Key. 13:20, Bobby Joe. 29:13, Dan Martin. 1:14, Jerry Buffalo. 2:32, Evan Bridger. 20:27, Arthur Coughlin. 8:98, Jerry Garrett. Got another woman down there right now. Number 141, Marcy Kirk. 11:70 is Michael Winnick. 14:96, Bob Snyder. 21:63, Herb Meyer. 31:54, William Watson. 31:70, Ajay Kadambi. 2:20 Valley, Daniel Conway. 32:65, Jeff Pagano. Francisco De Leon is 23:60. 23:98, Ralph McCargo. 18:85, Tony Eichstadt. 4:91, Mike Bondulakin. 9:43, Michael Kahn. 2:25, Bill Huerta. 21:03, Tony Powell. And 23:40, Chris Llewellyn. 9:39, Owen Brown. 21:84, Patrick Taylor. 29:62, Bruce Whitman. 25:50, Avo Silva Jr. 32:22, Vincent Escarpi. 30:26, David Harper. 32:45, Fredo Hernandez. 23:09, Thomas Pena. 26:21 will be Mark Floyd. Dr. Harley Hartman, number 1589. Heading up any of the cardiovascular investigations for running. Dr. Harley Hartman, member of the clinic here for the clinical marathon at the former high hurdle, Texas A&M. 26:95, Raul Pazzi. 19:44, Luis Mendoza. 13:60, David Wadsworth. 7:82, Richard Barnett. 16:63, Eric Wright. 18:66, John Jones. And 24:96, Joseph Giordano. Another woman coming up. Women's number 669, Sharon Kilmer. 4:52 will be Dave Henry. Will be 44, Tony Allison. 18:52, Stephen F. Neal. 6:49, Walt Britt. 16:47, Dennis Edwards. Keep going. David Lucas, 14:74. Clark Rodman, 2:50. 21:93, Michael Kilgore. 24:64, Gordon Franklin. 19:30, that is the 8-hour away. 12:09, Roy Cozy. He's on the other women. 6:55, Barbara McQuillan. Nicholas Salcedo is 5:65. 27:20, John Howard. 15:16, David Eastwood. 7:10, Thomas Henry. 4:56, Eddie Shore. 15:09, David McDonald. 2:78, Austin O'Toole. The Houston Pinnacle Marathon registration. They continue after Austin O'Toole. Richard Wade, number 29:18. 6:45, Stephen Nestle. 18:79, Ken Waller. 2007, Craig Schwenko. 3:11, Jaime Rodriguez. 5:93, Juan Castellanos. 31:78, William Slow. 26:80, John Shearer. 20:63, Juan Rivas. 21:94, Michael Sichelski. 3:39, Julia Tassel, the women's Red Cross. Joe Berry is 8:92. 29:92, Gary DeBrule. Dennis Olsen, 597. Kenneth Hodges, 779. Arsenio Martin. 794, Samuel Limerick. 2009, Marvin Johnson. 919, Bruce Cobb. 2100, Ronald Bishop. 703, Ron Charles. 1671, Joe Post. 2001, Larry Maywood. 1623, William Cook. 534, Mike Warfield. 1068, Ray Williams. 482, James Blanchard. 1057, John Danielson. 305, Howard Cooks. 2576, Bruce Brett Nugent. 467, Chris Chantel. 3396, James McKinney. 22nd, Ronaldo Castillo. 31-62, William Bradford, 13-60. Nick DeLong, 22-80, Carol Green, 23rd. 25-29, Herbert Jumble. 17-94, Charlie Greenwell. 28-14, Barry Bennett. 30-46, Daniel Lichty. 29-27, Hero Pollard. 444, Stephen Reinica. 31-12, Bruce Sutter. 411, Terry Enders. And 1921, Rick Carroll. 1106, Robert Sleet. 1140, Jeff Weatherstein. 1405, Scott Glenn. 1267, James Plummer. And 1506, Arvo Trimmer. 1206, Glenn Goodall. 1555 will be Frank Forrest. 1223 at the finish line, Lucian Claybuck. 3285, Brian Rogers. 2639, Ted Hodges. 295, Gene Woodruff, and 3293, Don Oakland. Ladies and gentlemen, the awards for the top runners will be made in 30 minutes at noon here on the platform. We'll get their Texas cowboy hats for the winners, checks from the Pinnacle people for the prize money for this race. We go in 1608 is Ramiro Rivera. 2492 Alan Walker and 2895 Rodolfo Guerra. 2327 Chuck Moore and 2608 Keith Barker. 1073 Keith Kirklock. 3155 Randy Williamson. 459 Bruce Ward. 3440 Thomas Sims and 2893 Jim Governor. 3403 James Richard. 1018 Roy Moore. 106 Tom Gillespie. Kim Barrett, one of our women, number 160, about to finish. Here she comes, Kim Barrett. Somebody else up with the 143 among the women coming in. 3449 would be Larry McPhillips. 236 Lisa Martin among the women. 2357 Don Zedek and 2027 Mickey Preachy. 2285 is Robert Covington. 1085 Don Wall. 676 Libert Trees. Lisa Martin. David Gosnay. 188 of the women is Mary Ogden. 2845 Bill Rusko. Wendy Lee Renner, number 11 from New Zealand. The women. Jasso. 2790, William Kaiser. Women, 333. Mara, Master Giovanni. 2161, Willie Bull. 1692, Mark Boozer. 690, Ronald Gagnon. 1219, Mark Taylor. Robin Wallace for the 2013. Marshall Laughlin, women number 256. Woman 182, Kathleen 6:16, Mark Griffin. Christine Onyxcott, number 428 for the women. 6:36, Donna Wright. One of our Masters women, Donna Wright. Watching for, ladies and gentlemen, our youngest runner, number 2216, 12-year-old Doug Fisher. We've got 6 boys and a 13, and one of our several age group record holders is Wesley Paul from Overland, Kansas, from 1194. Wesley at 16 holds 3 previous age group records. Another to watch for, number 1804, 74-year-old Clyde Villamez, the oldest runner this year and the only man to run in all 14 is the Jericho Marathon. City Councilman Jim Greenwood is number 101. The City Comptroller Lance Laylor, number 102. Laylor is running with Greenwood to keep an eye on.
Channel 2 Sports, the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon. Brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
It is just after dawn in our city, and in fact, in less than an hour, over 4,500 runners will begin to meander over a course of 26.2 miles through many of our neighborhoods of the city of Houston. This is the 1987 edition of the Houston Tenneco Marathon. Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Franklin, and so glad to be back with you again this year for the 1987 version. And I'm very pleased to have the gentleman to my left, Cree Kelly, who was with us last year, the past chairman of the American Long Distance Runners Association. Welcome back, sir, to the streets of Houston, literally.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, it's great to be back, and you know, it's great to be at a U.S. National Championship, and that's what it is here in Houston in '87.
You know, Cree, it's not that they didn't think we did a good job last year, but they thought that maybe we needed another partner, somebody to talk about the ladies and also to add maybe a softer touch as far as looking in the camera, and we've got that. Gail Barron, a marathoner of note herself. Gail, welcome to the telecast this year.
Oh, thank you, Ron. It's a delight to be here. You know, I've heard about this race, and it's one of the top-ranked marathons across the country, and I'm glad to be a part of the Channel 2 News team.
All right, let me tell you, usually at this point of the scene center, we talk about weather, or we put it somewhere down the way. Folks, unless you've been under a rock someplace today, even a duck hunter would have turned off the alarm, rolled back over, and he would not be out. These guys are going to do it. 38 degrees is the temperature right now. Wind gusting anywhere from 18 to 20 miles an hour. And Gail, I'll start with you. What does this do to a marathon runner?
Well, all I can say is I'm glad I'm not running today. For an Atlantan, it's pretty cold for me, and the wind can affect a runner. Actually, it can hurt their times most effectively, and especially someone who's used to warmer climates. Maybe all the Houston people that are running this marathon are going to be affected by the wind and the cold weather.
Great. Let me ask you this. For a guy like Paul Cummings, and these guys are going out for time, the defending champion here, you hit something like the Elysian Viaduct, and there's nothing to shield you from the wind. Do you expend even more energy? Do you hurt your time in the end, or how do you face it?
Well, these guys are compensating naturally for it. Paul Cummings comes from an area similar to mine where we're used to the cold weather. I left Denver, it was 0. But the sun was shining. And Paul Cummings is prepared for that kind of eventuality. So are all the great marathoners. And plus, they're great machines. The question I would have is whether or not Paul Cummings is prepared for today's race.
Right now, while we've got a couple of seconds, let's go back and look at history, the first 15 years of the Houston Marathon.
There is no tape of the early years of the race, but in 1972, when things started, only 138 runners were entered. 73 finished, with Danny Green the winner. By 77, entries had doubled. A year later, the race was moved downtown. Ron Tabb won the first of 2 titles, setting a race record. In '79, Tenneco became the sole sponsor of the marathon, and 1,700 people were entered. Sue Peterson set a Texas women's record with a time of 2:46:17. That was nearly 2.5 hours better than the women's winning time in 1972. In '80, Tabb won again, and it was also discovered the course, which was changed in '79, was short by a half mile. In '81, Bill Rogers ran for the first time and set a new course record. Entries reached the 2,000 mark that year. Benji Durden and Lori Bender were winners in '82. Tenneco offered a $50,000 purse for the top 10 finishers. In '83, Ingrid Christensen won the first of back-to-back titles and set a new course record, even though she was 3 months pregnant. Britain's Charles Spedding beat Massimo Magnani of Italy in a photo finish in '84. First prize was $20,000 from a $100,000 purse. In '85, Houstonian Marty Freilich posted the best time by an American in the year, 2:11:13. Sylvia Ruger set a Canadian women's record in winning. Last year, Paul Cummings pulled away from close friend David Edge in the final quarter mile to win his first major marathon in a time of 2:11:30. On the women's side, Veronique Moreau won her first major race as well. And in '87, the field is even better. I'm Duke Fry.
So let's talk about the individual competitors in this year's marathon. Ladies first. Veronique Moreau is back to defend her title. Do you put her at the top of the list or somewhere up there?
I definitely have to put her at the top of the list. However, it's interesting, Ryan, because there are 9 women who've run 2:33 or better going into this race. So conceivably, it could be a close race for the women, especially at the beginning. You might see a pack of women together at the beginning. Veronique has run 2:28. However, she talked to me yesterday and said that she's had a stress fracture. She did not finish the European Championships, and that could affect her mentally. She said the last month has been very good for her, and she's going out at 5:45 pace. But close behind her, or right there with her, will probably be Bente Moe from Norway. She's now training in Seattle under Doris Brown Heritage, who's a former Olympian, and she really thinks that, I talked to Doris, and she thinks that Bente definitely is going to run a 2:30 pace or better today.
Best of the rest, or somebody who might come out of the pack, particularly with the conditions like this?
Well, we can't forget Sylvie Bornet from France. She last year, I believe in the spring, ran the London Marathon, placed 4th, and ran 2:31:43. And then on the Masters side, we got to mention Evie Palm from Sweden. Not only is she a top international Masters competitor, but she's also in the top contention for the women.
Okay, Cree, what about the guys? Paul Cummins is back. He's here to defend, but he has got an absolute pile of folks that are going to be on his heel.
He sure does. And remembering that this is a U.S. national championship, that means that the other Americans that are here have something to run for as well. I mean, there's a good prize structure separate from the overall prize structure that's available for the Americans. But I think it's Denmark against the United States. I think if you have to really put your finger on it, you're going to have to say that the Danes that are here are prepared to race. Zachariasen, Jorgensen, those kinds of guys are not fools. They've run 2:11 easily several times. Zachariasen just recently beat Jeffrey Koech, who's also in the field from Kenya. He beat him in California in December. Remember last year, we got some guys out of that race that came here and did extremely well, including Paul Cummins.
That's right. Let me ask you guys something. Like in horse racing, they say that different horses are mudders. There's no such thing as a good wind runner in marathons, is there?
No, there's good survivors. And I'll tell you what, I think that is where the race will change today. As opposed to the history of this event, now we're dealing with some significant wind problems out here, and we are all saying, well, the last 8 miles will have it at their back, and that sounds great. You got the first 18 to worry about, and I think that we're going to have a tactical event, which means the time may not be quite as fast as athletes may have thought about, 2 days ago. And so a guy like Paul Cummins saying, well, I'm not in tip-top shape, but I can run 2:13, I may be able to pull the whole thing out again.
That's right. All right, I'll put you both on the spot for the ladies. What do you think it'll take to win it today?
Well, I think
2:28 last year.
No, 2:31 last year, I think. But I do believe that somebody's going to run 2:30.
Do you really?
I do.
Okay, what about the guys?
I wish I could predict on the women. That's easier. I think that, quite frankly, I think Gail is accurate on that. And I think that on the guys, it's going to be somewhere between 2:12 and 2:13, unless we have a remarkable change in the weather.
Over the 15 years of the Houston Tenneco Marathon, this course has changed considerably, and particularly last year when all of a sudden it went off Memorial Drive and Allen Parkway to the neighborhoods, the streets of Houston. Earlier this week, we went out, and let's go back and give you a preview of what the course looks like, the 26.2 miles. So the new course kicks off at the Hyatt. Runners will go north to Texas, then they turn east, and they go past the Rice Hotel. Then it's on to Crawford. And at this point, they'll turn north and head toward the north side and the first hill of the course. This is the Elysian Viaduct. It takes the runners out of downtown and onto one of the city's Hispanic neighborhoods. On the other side of the viaduct, the runners then turn west on Lorraine, and they follow that to Hogan. And that is just past the 3-mile mark and on to Main Street. Main Street then takes them on to the second hill past the University of Houston, back into downtown, and this time heading south toward the Medical Center. And the runners pass the 5-mile point and then turn east on Elgin. This is the beautiful Mecum Fountain. We, of course, are on Main, just off Rice University. The runners would have come north out of Herman Park, and they head down Main next to Rice University on that beautiful tree-lined street. Serene is the setting right now. That won't be the case later this morning because this is mile mark 9. The place that we're located right now, this is just about the halfway mark, 13 miles. We are just off the Southwest Freeway and Wesleyan. And right here on West Park, this is the new overpass that has just been built. I want you to take a look at it and consider one thing. If you measured from the ground to the top, it's elevated only about 35 feet. But also stop and consider the psychological barrier for Houston runners. We simply don't see many hills in this part of the country, certainly not in the Bayou City. After running through the Galleria, the competitors then will turn west on San Felipe. And 1.5 miles later, right down on Potomac through Tanglewood, when the runners hit Woodway at about 18 miles. Then it's east, and they head for Memorial Park. We're on Woodway, just off the West Loop. And back behind me is what the runners call the Woodway Bridge. Why is that significant? That's the 20-mile barrier. And if you know anything about marathon running at all, that's the wall. You can talk to runners, you can ask them, hey, describe, what do you mean the wall? Many say you have to experience it. You really can't describe it. The last 2 miles will be the toughest part of the course for most runners who, already tired from the pounding of 24 miles, will have to negotiate the ups and downs of the underpasses on Allen Parkway. You'll see a lot of walking here, particularly among the average and beginner marathoners. About a half mile from the finish line, the runners pass Sam Houston Park in Lamar. They make a final turn to the north on Smith Street with about 600 yards to go. The 26-mile point is just past McKinney, and you'll see most of the runners reach down for that final sprint. 60 seconds to 2.5 minutes later, the runners cross the finish line between the Albert Thomas Convention Center and the Olympic Festival Square. We'll be right back with the start of today's race, so stay with us.
The 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
95% of Chevy Nova owners would recommend their new Nova to a friend. If that doesn't mean much to you, think about this. Of the cars you've owned, how many would you recommend to a friend? New Chevy Nova. Reading the list of standard features on a new Chevy Nova can get pretty boring.
Standard.
But don't stop.
Standard.
It gets better at the end.
Tenneco is a leading oil and gas producer. Tenneco is America's most successful shipyard. Tenneco is America's best-selling shock absorber. Tenneco is a leading maker of farm and construction equipment. Tenneco is one of America's largest natural gas pipelines. The Tenneco family, building on quality.
Well, back here in the studio where it's a little bit warmer and less breezy than it was out on the course this morning. Let's talk about what happens as far as preparation. We'll roll some video and what goes through your mind. It is still dark and you know that 8 o'clock bewitching hour is coming up.
Interestingly enough, when I was up this morning at O'Dark early, I think it was 6 a.m., I looked around the entryway of the hotel and a few of the athletes were actually getting up and getting out and finding out what the weather was like. And that was really the most important thing on everybody's mind was it humid? Was it hot? What was going on out there?
Gail, did you go out and run any great distance prior to running a marathon or just enough to loosen up?
Just enough to loosen up, Ron. I don't think it's important. The important thing, though, is to stretch the muscles. You'll see a lot of these runners jumping around, obviously stretching their muscles, trying to stay loose, because in colder weather, your muscles tighten up a lot.
Right here. I'll tell you what, let's take it sound up full, and Mayor Kathy Whitmire is there to do the opening. Well, you got to see it to believe it. You can look at it on videotape all day long, but when you see 4,500 people coming at you, and particularly, you stop and think, if you totaled all the work hours that go into that group right there, I wonder what kind of figure you'd come up with.
It would be an astounding figure, the amount of preparation that each of these people put into this one event. Now, I'm not talking just about going out and trying to get in a training run every day, but the mental preparation. Some people say that a marathon ultimately is about 80% mental. I don't know, Gail, what do you think? You won Boston. What was it like?
I've always said it's at least 70% mental.
Do you really? It's that high?
Oh, absolutely. You have to really forget about the cold weather and totally think about the race.
All right, right there, you talk about the cold weather, and we had given weather conditions. It was unbelievable. 38 degrees, wind gusting up to 20 miles an hour. Humidity all of a sudden was not a factor. It usually is in Houston, but when it is that very cold. But how quickly do you forget, or have you totally forgotten it, like when Mayor Whitmire shoots the gun? You've already gotten it out of your mind? You have to. You really got to get psyched for the race and try not to think about that your body's cold, and really the adrenaline is flowing at this point. An interesting point I wanted to make, too, we're talking about the cold weather, and before the start of the race, you and I and Cree were talking, and I said, what in the world happened before we had running tights, the Lycra tights? Right. I know I'd like to have the concession on what was out there today. I don't know how many thousands of pairs, but there were a bunch. Well, it's interesting to, right at the start,
I think most athletes are no longer thinking about the weather. What they're thinking about is, I don't want to fall in this first 200 meters.
That's right.
It's so important.
That's right. I'll tell you what let's do. Let's go on the scoreboard here. I want to show something else that, for instance, when you won Boston, you didn't get to see the figures that we're looking at right here because I don't think you won prize money, but that is the situation. This is for the men on the left and the women on the right. $22,000 for first place, 13.8, and the breakdown goes on. But let's move it one more time and show you the difference as you go on down the scale. Still, to place 10th in this race, $1,200. When did they start paying?
That's an interesting question. I think it really had to happen.
79, was it not?
Well, there was money in running.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to be careful because under the table there was money in 78,
In other words,
79.
we would like for you to come. This is called an inducement. We would like for you to come and participate in our marathon, and there's more than a plane ticket involved.
Europeans described it as money on the start and money on the finish line. And I really think it took the Cascade runoff in Portland, Oregon several years ago, and it seems like a lifetime now, when athletes took a stand and said, and thanks to Don Cardong, who's the president of the Association of Road Racing Athletes, fourth in the Olympics in '76, that guy, that one man, took a stand with the athletes behind him almost in a union-esque kind of format and said, we want to be paid for what we do appropriately within the rules of amateur standing, make it work, and he alone, along with the 3 or 4 other leaders, made it possible, and that's why athletes enjoy this kind of money today.
We just saw the start of the race, and that was downtown at the Hyatt. Now we know that last year they started running this race through the neighborhoods of city. Let's roll the tape again right now, and we will pick up the runners at the 5-mile mark. First of all, we will see the men competitors, and the men possibly had an advantage, Cree, as far as a larger number that had paced at about the same pace. With the women, the numbers were not as large. For instance, mile 5, here we see it right here.
Well, we have an early leader, a gentleman wearing the colors of Mexico, named Rivera, and he's out in front. He's broken away from the main body. Now, typically you'd say, well, he's got to be a rabbit. He's an early pace setter. He's premature. He should be back with the rest of the group. And yet, he's out in front, but he looks very smooth. He doesn't look like your typical early leader.
But yet, the people who tried to pull away and do it singular of purpose really took it on the chin, so to speak, did they not? I mean, they got buffeted pretty good by the winds.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot smarter to be back where the other 40 people are, just back in the pack, just kind of hanging out until till later on when the race develops.
Now the women, we see them at the 5-mile mark, and you were in the truck all the way watching the ladies, and they, like I said, they didn't have the large packs to run to try to help and draft, so to speak, did they?
No, they really didn't. I was surprised. I really thought that a lot of the women would stay together before the 5-mile, but this right here, number 4 on your left is Bentamou, and on your right is Veronique Moreau. And they stayed together here at 5 miles right at 5:45 pace, which is what both of them had anticipated doing.
Veronique, of course, is the defending champion. She won in 1986 at the Houston Tenneco Marathon, and Moo placed 3rd last year. She spells her name M-O-E. And a lot of people, Houstonians, were trying to pronounce that today, and she was called a lot of different things, but it is Moo.
That's right.
You know, I would comment that Veronique Moreau, and Gail and I were talking about this earlier, ran a very important race, in my mind, back on the 1st of January. It's in northern England. It was under gale force conditions, just about on the wind, and she won it just like she did last year. So my anticipation is that Veronique Moreau would make a good show today, just based on that performance. It's a 14-plus mile race.
But she said afterwards that at the 10-mile mark, it went like this for her. Yeah. The wheelchairs went off at 7:45 this morning. These guys are unbelievable athletes, and of course, I never cease to be amazed at what they go through as far as training and everything.
Remarkable that an athlete like that can perform so well. It's got to be a good image just in the public eye. You watch these wheelchair athletes, the amount of strength and endurance that goes into this is just absolutely extraordinary. Now, they find this course very appealing.
That's right, and they train just like we do. They get on the track, they do intervals, they do strength training, cross-training types of techniques and everything.
Well, and the upper body strength is astounding. The nice thing I heard a couple of wheelchair athletes say last week at another event, they said, The reason that we're out here doing this is not just for ourselves. It's to prove to the rest of the world and other athletes that are maybe not so able-bodied that you can go out and do it. I saw a quadriplegic compete in a wheelchair event last week.
These guys, you talk about the real heroes of what goes on as far as sport in this day and time. I guarantee you, my hat is off to them, and I know from the reaction they got at the start line this morning. In fact, you know, you might be surprised at just how serious the wheelchair racers are. Robert Courtney, for example, he told Dan O'Rourke that wheelchair competitors actually try to psych each other out by exchanging phony training times. And also, you might be surprised at just how hard these guys train. Dan found that Courtney is a perfect example of that, too.
Give me your hands,
A lot of people think that I'm just doing this just to occupy my time. You know, I'm not doing this to just to bide my time. I'm doing this because I'm an athlete, and I want to win just like anybody else.
You ready?
Rob Courtney designed a dream, and now he pursues it lap after lap at the University of Houston track. Pushed by his coach, Judy Einbinder, Courtney excels at every wheelchair distance. This man holds the world record at 100 meters, just 15.7 seconds. No one's ever traveled faster.
Hit it.
In a sprint or a marathon, his purpose is the same.
I would really like to think that I'm doing it for myself, but at the same time trying to convey a message to you. I'm just like anybody else, except I roll around on a pair of wheels, and you roll around on, or you walk around on shoes.
Some people in wheelchairs accept athletics as therapy. Rob Courtney embraces them as a lifestyle, just as he did before the accident.
Yeah, I used to do all the usual things like, you know, well, back in New Zealand, play rugby, do scuba diving, play tennis. We were out scuba diving one weekend, and I got drunk and then fell off this cliff into the party. That's as much as I remember.
Rob Courtney's life has never been delicate.
It's pretty violent for someone like myself, because I'm sort of like the fast guy on the team, and so I sort of got to expect to get hit. Oh, Sandy Bauer, please.
Rob works full-time to promote wheelchair sports. He recruits athletes and donations for this summer's Wheelchair Games in Houston. The rest of the time, he chases the dream. He trades his 22-pound chair for his 12-pound racer, tugs at his mangled gloves.
They look terrible, but they do the job.
And heads out with his friend, Jeff Sewell. They train together every day, rain or shine. Today it rained.
Why a marathon? Oh, I thought after my first one I'd never do another one again, and I felt so bad. It's fun. It's real good. You got millions of people lined up along the side. You don't want to stop because you feel like if you feel like you stop the race, you're going to disappoint all the people, and you don't want to do that. So you just keep pushing and pushing until you finish. It's fun going out training. It's nice to see people think, wow, you know, that guy's great, and the other people that I beat train just as hard as me. So it's a real accomplishment to win something like a marathon.
Rob Courtney, you think he's not a hero? We were just talking as that piece was going on. These guys don't want your sympathy. They want your support far and away. And you saw him on the telephone trying to garner up more support for those guys. They work awfully hard.
Well, the wheelchair athletes have an association, too, which they support, and that's absolutely right. I can't imagine knowing a guy like George Murray as an example, one of the finest athletes in the world as a wheelchair athlete. I can't imagine feeling sorry for him, and I don't think he would ever allow it to happen. And plus, he's strong enough to back it up.
Let's go back to the course. Mile 7 for the men, and at this point, completely out of the mind has gone the weather conditions for today. Cree, what is happening at this right here? You got two large packs now, kind of broken off.
Well, you've got packs of men right now in the lead pack. Of course, you see that the early leader actually it shows that we're up at mile 8, and they're right on about 2:13 pace. Several different people in the pack, but the guy in the dead center is the one that you probably want to look at. That's Zachariasen, and I think
Jorgensen also was up there,
and Jorgensen. You've got Hertz in there, a whole host of athletes that are competing in this, and of course now we're on to the women.
And this is where the first move was made by Bente, was it not?
That's right. At about 6 3/4 miles, they had a little conversation. Veronique just said, I can't hold the pace, backed up a little bit, and held about 10 yards behind her. Now, this is not quite at that particular time. This is right before 7 miles, and they're at 40:04, which is just about a 5:42 pace, and right about the pace that Bente had planned to do.
You mentioned that she turned around or Veronique said something to her. There's not a lot of conversation that goes on during a marathon, though, is there?
Not really. I mean, they share bottles from time to time, and they converse a little bit, but basically they're thinking about their own race.
Yeah, well, they're into it at that point, too. And I want to mention that on the men's race, one of the things that we want to be cognizant of right now is who decides to group with whom, who's keying off the other person, and, you know, the second pack is equally important to the first pack right now.
We'll talk more about that in just a moment. The 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon. We'll be back with more, but right now, this time out.
The 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
Look out. 7-Eleven's still slicing prices. And here's new proof. Check this new super special price. 12-pack cans of Coors and Coors Light, just $4.99, now at 7-Eleven. You asked for it, and we listened. And remember, day in, day out, 7-Eleven's everyday price on all premium beer in 12-pack cans is just $5.69. Great everyday prices all around the store, plus super low specials. 7-Eleven, slices, prices.
Reading the list of standard features on a new Chevy Nova can get pretty boring.
Standard.
But don't stop.
Standard.
It gets better at the end. This import was styled in Europe, but it's not an Audi or a BMW. It's built in Japan, but it's not a Honda or a Mazda. It's a Chevy called Spectrum, made in Japan, imported by Chevrolet.
More on the 1987 marathon coming up, but if you just joined us to reintroduce the folks here again, Creek Kelly, as you remember, last year, in fact, the chairman of the Men's Long Distance Runners Association of America, or that's close anyway, I know officially.
Pretty close, the Athletics Congress.
Yeah. All right, and of course, Gail Barron is here with us out of Atlanta, Georgia, a marathon runner of her own right. In fact, the winner of the Boston Marathon in 1977. Let's go back to the course and let's pick up first the men's competition, and this will be at the 10-mile mark. And right now, you go beyond strategy. And tell us what happens in a situation like this, Creek. The bunch is still together.
They're still together, but you still have, you know, you've dropped Jorgensen a little bit. You know, he's in the back now. Guys are starting to shake out and try and get into the right group, but they're at right around 5:05 a mile pace, which puts them around 2:13 at the end if they can hold it all together. But right now, it's status quo. Let's just all stay together and let's keep it even. And Izar is still working up there in the first pack, and so this guy 3480 on your screen from Mexico, he's legitimate, so maybe he'll stay the whole way.
Jorgensen there behind. In this right here actually is the second pack, is it not?
That's the second pack, and of course here's the women.
That's right. This is Veronique, and I'm not sure. There you go. There's where Bente is. I was going to say she had fallen back, and this is at the 10-mile point. Bente Mu was 57.25. Bente is shielded behind the men at this particular time, and Veronique
She's taking advantage, literally, of the situation. What we're talking about with the men. She's doing some drafting, is she not?
She certainly is, and Veronique is about 10 seconds behind, 57.35. Interesting to note, Veronique had said she wanted to be, at 10 miles, she wanted to be 57 minutes, so she is 35 seconds behind. And I think what this shows is the lack of speed work because of that injury she suffered in August when she dropped out of the European Championship.
And how painful, because you're talking about a stress fracture, and it's not an ankle or a foot, we're talking about a shin.
That's right.
Gail and Creed, we talk so much about the runners that come from all over the country and also from around the world. This young lady here, Donna Rourke, a Houstonian, and certainly we don't want to leave out the local people. We're at about the 5.5-mile mark right here. Donna's best time in the marathon is 2:38. Very popular runner in the Houston area, and of course she not only competes here in Houston, but all over the country. That at about 5.5 miles today. Also, Paul Spence is the blonde who is just behind, actually inside left right here. His best time, I believe, is around 2:44, 2:45. Another Houstonian competing in the Houston Marathon today, and you can see just past 5.5, going on 6. And here's Debbie Warner. Her best time, I believe, is like 2:45 in the marathon.
Running very smoothly, I might add. She looks very good.
Actually up almost on her toes, like a sprinter.
Just showing you those local Houston runners on that same note. For the past several weeks, in fact, several months here on Channel 2, we have talked about novice marathon runners. And our own Bill Baiasu, who anchors the 5 o'clock show with Terry Anzer, has been in very strict training for the last 3.5, almost 4 months, getting ready for the Houston Tenneco Marathon. And before the race today, we visited with Bill. What were his thoughts before marathon number 1?
I slept about 3 hours last night, and I slept about 3 hours the night before that and 3 hours the night before that. I've been very excited. I'm looking forward to this with a great deal of anticipation and no small amount of apprehension either. My training hasn't gone as well as I would have liked for it to in the last month because of a knee injury. But I'm hoping for the best, and you know, I'm really counting on the other runners in the crowd to kind of pick me up and bring me through it.
Your whole training has been pretty much televised and publicized. Does that make you more nervous? Does that put more pressure on you?
Yeah, there's a lot more pressure to perform, to finish, and you know, even to do well at one point. But now I feel I'm going to feel good if I finish, and I'd love to do it at about 4 hours or a little under. God willing, I'll just get through it.
Do you think you'll make it?
I think I will. I have to believe I will. I have to.
There's Billy right there waving to the camera, and I can tell you he's about to head up the hill over on West Park. That's just about the 13-mile mark. You know, that's tough for anybody the first time running a marathon, and particularly when you sit on television every week and your compadres are getting on you a little bit, and everybody knows, hey, Bill's going to run in the marathon. And on top of everything else, he got tendonitis under his knees. He's had very little road work the last 2 weeks. That's not a good way to go into the first one, is it?
Well, in a way, if at least the last 2 weeks that he's been backing off from his training, probably is going to make him rested, because they say that the last week and a half to 2 weeks of training has no bearing on how you perform. You have to have done it before then. Yeah. Exactly.
You know, one of the things Houstonians have done a great job of, particularly since the course was moved out around the city last year, and that was in different portions of the city, that they would get together and have their own little neighborhood or block parties. Rosalinda Perez was up on the north side in primarily a Hispanic community. Let's have that report right now from Rosalinda.
It is by all means colorful and festive. Runners don't have to wait too long to find out the city's north side is glad to see them. And just in case the cheering isn't enough, Holy Name Catholic Church is providing the spiritual support with a special blessing from above. No doubt one of the best cheerleaders along the route is Sophie Salas.
The more they see us cheering, the more they do it faster.
Someday I'm not gonna. Diane Gongora is inspired by the runners. She says someday she may even run in the marathon. Diane thinks this could also spark an interest in the neighborhood kids.
I think it's real good because we have a lot of participants and the children to come and see what it is. Maybe they can want to be tomorrow, be in the run. I think it's great.
What do you think of all the fanfare along the route?
That's great.
It's fantastic. It really is. It's our first one, and it's great. It's great.
This is the second year neighborhoods have rolled out the red carpet for the marathoners. And already some runners and spectators can't wait to see what sort of fanfare is in store for next year. Rosalinda Pettis, Channel 2 News.
We say thanks also, I'm sure, that the folks running in the race to the people on the north side, because let's be real honest, 38 degrees, wind gusting 20 miles an hour, the wind chill factor. They told the runners just before the race this morning, between 18 and 20 degrees is the same effect on your body. So those were brave souls who came out to cheer them on.
Well, I think you get to the point where you've got to go out and you know you're going to run a marathon. There's no way you're going to drop out of the marathon before it starts. You're at least going to give it your best shot. But I'm sure some people had to philosophically say to themselves, well, it's colder, and that's probably good because I won't overheat today.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go back to the course, halfway point. This is the 13-mile mark, and first of all, we look at the men, and this is how they stand. You can see the lead pack right here.
Now we're getting into a little bit different. We're down to about, maybe 13, 14 people in that lead pack in no particular order. You've got tucked in the middle, you've got Zachariasen, you've got Shahanga is back in there, it's Jorgensen is in there. We have a really good lead pack. You know, you're well represented across the board, and they went through at about 106.40. They're still on 2:13 pace. It's very difficult to say how it's going to sort out. The best I can determine that the lead American right now seems to be Rick Sayre. Just you can't quite see him in the pack. He's right behind these immediate guys. But the point is that the Pan Am trials are riding on this. Who goes to the Pan Am Games in August is functionally dependent on this as they round the corner. But once again, they're still on about, with about 14 guys in that pack, they're still on about 5:05 pace.
And that's at about the halfway mark. Now, as far as the ladies are concerned, at this juncture, Miss Moo had just about put it in her hip pocket and said, if you're going to catch me, then you've got a real task on your hand today. Isn't that about the situation?
That's right. I was on the truck, and we were watching her, and she really took the lead right at about 11, and this is coming up to halfway point. And at halfway, she's about on a 2:31 pace. This is 5:46 a mile. That's exactly what she wanted to be on. You know, it's funny because when I was talking to Doris Brown Heritage, her coach, she said that Benta was a straight A student. So she really strives for excellence in everything. So she's right on schedule, exactly the way she wants. And the wind's not affecting her yet.
Yeah, let me ask you something. She's running right here, and obviously there are some men right there in the pack that she's running around. But how tough is it to concentrate in a situation where Veronique has dropped off? That is her nearest competitor in the race. Is it tougher to maintain concentration when you don't have somebody right there burning behind you?
It's not as tough as long as there are men there with her to play off, and she has somebody around her. But once she gets out in the open, then it makes it tougher.
Okay. We'll be back with more of the Houston Tenneco Marathon, the 1987 version. Stay with us.
The 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
This import was styled in Europe, but it's not an Audi or a BMW. It's built in Japan, but it's not a Honda or a Mazda. It's a Chevy called Spectrum, made in Japan, imported by Chevrolet. In 1977, the Nova looked like this and was brought to you by Chevrolet. In 1987, the Nova looks like this and is brought to you through a joint effort of General Motors and Toyota. New Chevy Nova.
Warm moments, she's such a delight. Rub-a-dub, baby, the water's just right. Snuggle down cozy, baby, sleep tight. Let our gentle flame keep you warm tonight. Warm moments, for those warm moments, nothing warms you like gas.
Warm is what natural gas is all about. Clean, efficient, and in most areas, the lowest priced fuel. Shouldn't it be in your home?
Nothing warms you like gas.
Well, it is time now to take the men home. And in fact, as far as the two packs that we have been seeing, the leader pack and very close behind them, 7, 8 more runners. Let's pick it up at about mile 18, and we're going to take them all the way to the finish line. Cree?
Things have changed a little bit. We've dropped a number of runners, and right now in the lead pack on the left, you'll see as they come around the corner at mile 18, they actually are still on 2:13 pace, but Guillermo Cavermo is now on the left side of the screen. Behind him and tucked in on the left is Alan Zachariasen with a shirt on. To the right front of the screen is Alfredo Shahanga from Kenya. He's down in El Paso. His smarter older brother is one great world-class athlete. Now look right in the middle, Derek May. He's South African, but he's applying for citizenship in the United States.
And look where he's planted right now. He's right behind those first two bodies also.
You've got 5 guys tucked right in the middle, and Sam Gotcha off his left shoulder, just in the back there, and wheelchair. They're just coming up on one of the wheelchair athletes right here.
Crete, this also was at a time that we were up in the helicopter together between 18, 19, and 20, and in that area. And every once in a while, you see the shirt being thrown away right there, getting a little bit warm. Somebody would try to pull away, and you can see their breath. You can see the breath from the cold air and that wind blowing. All of a sudden, it was not a wise thing to do, and they'd go back into the pack again.
Well, exactly, and it's better to be tucked in right now. Now they've dropped, Izar, the Mexican, is back, so they've dropped another athlete. Zachariasen threw off his shirt. Geir Kvaermo and Derek May are on the shoulder. Now, it looks like Shahanga is not very comfortable being right into the pack.
But he didn't stay out there very long, did he?
No, he dragged right back in. Zachariasen is starting to look a little weary on the face. Derek May is as intent as he ever was, and Brian Sheriff is tucked in the back from Zimbabwe. His first marathon, and you know, he's running next to Kvaermo, who is his second marathon. May's run a bunch of marathons. Each one of them has got a different thing. Shahanga just looked at his watch.
One thing you have to be very careful of in a situation like this, too. You are trying to draft, you stay in that same pack, lose concentration for 2 seconds, you can be flat on your face in that street. And then all of a sudden it's very hard to hop back up and gain pace again, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Now we have, it's important to note right here, we just dropped Zachariasen, so he's become a historical footnote.
And
Brian
look who's
Sheriff,
out front, Mr. May.
Yeah, and he's looking over at Shahanga. He's probably wondering what he's going to do.
Look at Derek's left arm. I mean, there's always some little quirk in a particular running form of some of the top runners, and of course they run fantastically anyway. So, but it's interesting to note his left arm and how it moves differently from his right.
Well, you know, we're up to about mile 20 right here, and you notice that Derek has been looking around. They've come up over this hill. They're still on that 5:05 pace. Kvaermo's looking around. Sheriff is looking pretty good. And it doesn't look like Zachariasen's going to be able to get back to that pack. I don't know. What do you think? He's tucked too far back now.
Even that distance right there, and you say, boy, that's not very far. But once you get off that pace, you burn up a ton just to get back up even with the group, don't you?
Yeah, exactly right. Now, the question will be, who is going to break away from this pack? Or it looks like we're going to start dropping Sheriff now as we go by this mile point. This is about mile 22, and Brian Sheriff is now moving off to the side. Maybe he's just going to go. Maybe just getting water. Yeah, he's getting water, but that's enough, don't you think, Gail, to break concentration right there at that point?
Right, and that's an interesting thing to note, the water intake. Don't you think it's very important for even the front runners to take in fluids in this very cold
Yeah, do you lose sight of that? It's a cold day, it's not a hot day, but you're still perspiring. But do you lose sight of the fact that you need water?
Right, you don't have as much desire for water. You're not as thirsty, so you think, oh, I don't need it. But towards the end of the race, and of course, even at 22 for the top runners, you start feeling it, and you need to make sure you take in the fluids all along the way.
Okay, for the locals, you can see you're coming out of the bend, just out of Memorial Park, and they are about to head down what actually is a long incline.
This is one of the few times that we saw crowds along the way, unfortunately.
Bless the heart, a lot of people went home early. It just got a little bit nasty out there.
That's right.
It didn't get a little bit nasty. It was a little nasty from the very start. 24 miles right here, Cree.
Well, as you come down off a hill like this, you've clearly got the race defined now. At mile 24, you've got 4 guys together. Not one of them looks like he wants to make a move, but somebody's going to have to make a move very, very soon to take this race apart, because you've only got 2 miles to go, and it's Derek May.
There it is, right there. That is the move that actually, as we will say, well, we have to say, is this the straw that broke the camel's back? And it sure appears to. All of a sudden, there's 20 yards in between himself and those back 3.
If anybody's going to make a move, they're going to have to make it to respond to him now. It looks like Gotcha is trying to come up as quickly as he can. Kvaermo's dropped back to Shahanga, but they're coming up out of underneath this underpass, and Derek May looks very, very strong. Has that kind of shuffling gait that, if you'll remember from last year, David Edge also had. But that's a tough incline right there, just to come out. And if I were one of the other guys, I'd have to say now or never, or else I'm going to have to settle for second.
Boy, the place that he picked right there to make the move, underneath that bridge at Allen Parkway and Waugh, and not only did the other guys have to pick up that extra 20, 25 yards, but he caught them on an incline. Do you think that he had planned that ahead of time?
I don't think so, because I think Derek just decided that he had to make a move, and it occurred at a good time for him. The one thing that he's got to be thinking about is that the last time he ran under similar conditions was Columbus Marathon, middle of November. He ended up 3rd in that race. He has now decided to take take it out in stride in a first-place situation with 2 miles to go. And he knows he's got some tough athletes behind him.
That's right.
But he has improved his pace a little bit. Actually, he's been dropping down below 5 minutes a mile last couple of miles.
That's the turnoff at Jeff Davis Hospital, and they are coming toward the skyline of Houston, Texas. And you can see that all of a sudden, the competitors, the 3 behind, the distance is continuing to stretch out, and they're at mile marker 25.
Yeah, they're 2:05:44 at mile 25, so they are certainly well within tolerance of last year's time, under perhaps some people would say a little tougher conditions because it was cold and windy, but you know, the wind was down into single digits when we thought it was going to be a tough tailwind on them, which would help them in those last miles. They'd do it themselves.
Let's go back to him and watch him as he comes home and coming into downtown Houston. You can see the people back behind on the running way there on Allen Parkway, and the crowds are beginning to pick up somewhat, but also I point out you can see his breath. This was a tough day, not only for runners, but just for spectating.
You know, Derek May is a fine athlete. He's run, I mean, this isn't his first marathon. We should mention that. It's his 12th marathon, I think. But this has got to be a very exciting moment for him.
He's never won before, has he?
No, and you know, he realizes it's within his reach. If everything just holds together, it's within his reach. And when I talked to him in Columbus, when I was there, he said that he needs a good win. He wants a good win. Whether or not he could achieve it in the next few months, time would tell. But this man can run marathons. He's like a marathon machine.
26-mile point right here, and I'll tell you, we're going to stop talking and let you listen to the natural sound, because the crowd will start to take over as far as helping him in intensity, but he knows right now that all he's got to do is keep up this pace, and the 87 Houston Tenneco Marathon is his. 400 yards away. Let's listen to it.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Right back. 1 second. Now. Slow down. Slow down. 10, 15.
Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen. The Houston Tenneco Marathon champion, Derek May. At 2:11:45, 46, 47, 48, Derek May to 10. Also at 2 minutes.
Here's second place. That's Pierre Cavermo in second place, and
2:11:49, I think, is what the winning time was, and third place.
Here's Sam Gotcha coming in and looking terrific. He's got to be happy because he doesn't run well in cold weather, and yet he did today. And there's fourth place, Alfredo Shahanga in his first marathon. He's got to be thrilled. And here's Alan Zacharias, and he held on for fifth place. You got to give him credit for that. He's a marathon machine too. Was this his 23rd or 24th marathon? Congratulations to him. Brian Sheriff, his first marathon, another person out of Texas. And he's completed a marathon and a fine effort on his part, too. The interesting thing is, here's our top American, Rick Sayre. That means he is our #1 American for the Pan Am team, 1987 in August in Indianapolis, and he's got to be very proud of that. He's also the 1987 U.S. National Championship champion for the Athletics Congress. He's got to be very proud of that.
So Derek May is the man who wears the crown on the men's side of the competition as far as the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon. Here are the finishers. May with a time of 2:11:50. And then you can see Gotcha number 3, 4, Shahanga, Zachariasen is 5th, and as we just go through there, we'll let you read and decipher yourself. I will pick on Green and Martin because I know I can handle that. I also know that as soon as the race was over, as you continue to see how they finished, 14:15 is Hunter, 2:16:07, and in well, we're going to take a look at the women finishers in just a moment because we're going to show you how they finished. I also know that Derek May came straight upstairs, and Creek Kelly and I were waiting up there with microphones, and we had a chance to visit with him and got a reaction on his first marathon win, and it happened here in Houston. What about the wind? The temperature's not a problem. How much of a problem was the wind today?
As you said, the temperature was no problem. The wind, bit of tactics, I stayed behind the main group. And so I was shielded most of the way until I made my break the last 2 miles then. I think the wind was behind my back. So the wind didn't bother me at all.
We were watching you guys, and even at the 19-mile mark, there were still 6 guys in one big clump together, and you hit that at like 1:36:40 or somewhere in that area. Was it everybody still just, it was buddy-buddy until that last couple of miles?
No one was talking, but we were all watching each other. And I think we picked the pace up slightly after 20. I made a little move at 20, and a couple of guys did drop off the pace. And but there was no talking. It was just...
Well, what I'm curious about is who did you feel made the first major break? It looked like one of the guys, maybe it was Sam, was trying to get out ahead.
Sam the Gator made a break run about, I think, 23.5. And I went with him, and about 24 I made my move, and no one came with me after that.
Columbus, you finished 3rd not long ago. Weather conditions virtually the same, weren't they?
I thought Columbus was a lot colder than it was today.
Did you?
I ran 2:15:55 there, and I knew I was a lot fitter than that. So I wanted to come back today to the Houston Tenneco Marathon and try and prove myself.
And prove himself he did. He is the winner of this year's marathon. You know, also, before we go back and take a look at the ladies, the race course covers more than Houston, actually. In fact, at about the 10-mile point, the runners turn from South Main onto University into West University Place. And the folks there have turned out in droves to encourage the runners. Dan O'Rourke was there.
When they turn onto University Boulevard, past the elegant Georgian homes, the runners enjoy a mile of Norman Rockwell comfort. The big oak trees shield them from the wind, and the reception is especially warm. Who's Archie?
Archie Breyer.
Who's that?
He has not come by.
Archie is your husband? Why is she holding the sign?
Well, I'm his
That's
friend.
a good conversation piece. I'd like to know. Some hanky-panky going on.
All right. You guys are doing great.
Let her go.
Hang in there.
You're cheering for everybody.
Absolutely.
Do you have a husband or a boyfriend?
No, I just want to help them make it.
This is Westview Hospitality, West University Place. We do it this way all the time. We appreciate the marathon.
You know how to treat people, and you know how to brag on yourself.
We're a proud group. We can't help it.
When your freezing friends do run past in Westview, they're likely to see you indulging in a Bloody Mary and a bacon quiche. But if spectators here believe in suburban comforts, they will also stand at curbside in the cold and cheer you to the bitter end.
I always stay till the end because these are the ones that need it.
Yes, on a day like this, you can't just be curious to be a marathon spectator. You have to be dedicated. These folks are cheering for the runners, all right, but they might as well be cheering for themselves.
West University, great job by those people today. We will be back, and we'll take the ladies home and show you the winner of the 87 marathon on the ladies' side. That's next. Stay tuned.
The 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon is brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
Instead of showing you all of the things you can get with the new Chevy Nova, we thought we'd show you one of the things you can't get. Reading the list of standard features on a new Chevy Nova can get pretty boring.
Standard.
But don't stop.
Standard.
It gets better at the end.
Look out. 7-Eleven's still slicing prices. And here's new proof. Check this new super special price. 12-pack cans of Coors and Coors Light, just $4.99, now at 7-Eleven. You asked for it, and we listened. And remember, day in, day out, 7-Eleven's everyday price on all premium beer in 12-pack cans is just $5.69. Great everyday prices all around the store, plus super low specials. 7-Eleven slices prices.
Well, Mr. May, we saw just a moment ago, crowned the men's champion of the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon. Let's take the ladies home and let's pick them up. Benty Moo had just about put this thing out of reach, as we said earlier. And this is the 22-mile mark. And as you can see, you can't see anybody else back there, Gail.
That's right. And she's at 2:08:07 at the 22-mile point, which is going to put her in right at 2:32 pace if she keeps up this type of pace. She's running very smoothly. Interesting thing to note also, Ron, is that she trains on a treadmill to watch her running form. And if you'll watch her form, it's very fluid. And that's her coach, Doris Brown Heritage, right there giving her a yell. But, you know, the rules are pretty strict on coaches, so she was very careful. Doris Brown Heritage is very careful as an Olympic runner herself, as to not encourage her too much.
Turned her back on the camera and got back out of the way, which she should have.
That's right.
Doris Brown Heritage is also, you know, she's a great cross-country athlete, and now in Masters competition, she's winning some of these competitions. In fact, was in a 10-mile race in California in the middle of December and won her division of that race. And I think Benty Moo also ran in that.
That's right.
Let me ask you something about Benty Moo. We were talking to her. It's at the 24-mile mark here. You see her going underneath, this is on Allen Parkway, underneath the bridge at Waugh. Are those knee braces or pads, or what is that she wears underneath those tights?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I was asking the same question, and I did interview her afterwards and ask her why she had that knee brace. Basically, it's on her right leg, and she said that at one point she had problems with her knees, and now she only wears it for psychologically.
Is that right?
For
It doesn't bother anymore, but if she doesn't wear it, then she knows it will bother her.
Yeah, it's just like she's used to wearing it, she's been wearing it, and she's been running well, so she continues to wear it. She doesn't have any knee problems. But here is Bente Mo from Norway, finishing the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon with a time of 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 36 seconds. A great time. And here's second place, Veronique Moreau, the defending champion last year. And she's running pretty smooth considering that injury. She's going to cross the finish line and right at 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 36 seconds.
Only 3 minutes off the pace, and for coming off a stress fracture, that's some good doings.
And here's cute little Sylvie Bornet of France, running very smoothly. She told me after it was in an interview that it was very cold for her. She didn't like the cold weather, but she finished in 2 hours, 37 minutes, and 47 seconds. And here's the Masters champion, fourth place, Evie Palm from Sweden, running very fluid at 2 hours, 38 minutes, and 39 seconds. Great race. And here's Janice Klecker. Oh, good. It's a fantastic run for her.
Also, Debbie Warner, we showed you her just a while ago, a Houstonian competing in this today, and I think Debbie is going to finish with a time of 2:44.29, and we'll show you the entire finish coming up here in just a second. I believe that's good for
Debbie.
8th place. Yes, Debbie comes across the finish line. You can see her mashing her watch right there. Let's go to the scoreboard real quickly and show you. This is what the top 10 look like for the ladies as they finish today. Mo at 2:32.36, then Veronique Moreau, then Bornet, Palm, Klecker is 5th, and as we roll it, Grottenberg, Duffy, there is Warner in 8th place. And also we talked about Donna Rourke, 2:47, I believe is what she finished. Maybe some change on that one. Also, as soon as that race was over today, Bente Mo took some time and she visited with Gail and I about getting her first win. 3rd place finisher last year, but this is your first marathon win, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the feeling right now?
Oh, great. Never felt better in my life.
Were you looking over your shoulder when you came down the final street here in the final yards?
No, I never look over my shoulder. Never.
Let's talk about leading up to this. A 10-mile race, you had a record time in Los Angeles in just December. Did you have a feeling then that you had paced yourself, that you were right on schedule as far as getting home with a victory here in Houston?
Well, I didn't know about the victory, but I felt I was in great shape then, and I was shooting for 2:30, but the weather conditions today it was not too great.
Well, she was only 2.5 minutes over that, and under the weather conditions, believe me, that is fantastic. The wheelchairs, let's show you the finish right here. Who else? The gentleman that we featured back earlier on in the show, Robert Courtney, comes home. He is the winner of the wheelchair competition for the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon. Got to wrap it up here. Cree Kelly, U.S. World Cup Marathon team leader, Seoul, Korea. That is coming up in April. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being back with us, okay?
My pleasure.
Gail Barron, you have a book, and that is entitled
The Beauty of Running.
All right. Hey, thank you guys for being here. It was super. And for everybody who worked on the Houston Tenneco Marathon, whether you had an official spot, you were a volunteer or what, and to Houston's finest, thanks. It was another great day, cold or not.
Channel 2 sports coverage of the 1987 Houston Tenneco Marathon has been brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet, and your participating 7-Eleven stores.
Tenneco, is a leading oil and gas producer. Tenneco is America's most successful shipyard. Tenneco is the world's leading exhaust system manufacturer. Tenneco is premium fruit, nuts, and vegetables. Tenneco is one of America's largest natural gas pipelines. The Tenneco family, building on quality.
That's a Nissan hardbody. It's got everything. It's his. It's got the big V6. Don't touch it. Never seen bigger tires. Don't kick them. Rides high. That's some truck. Yeah.
Now get 3.9% factory-sponsored financing or up to $800 cash back.
All eyes will be on Austin when Bill Clements becomes our state's highest elected official. See live coverage of the governor's inauguration Tuesday at noon on Channel 2.